pleased to be here. Thank you, everybody, for the invitation. Ileana and Alexis reached out to me a few weeks ago and asked me if I would come and share my story as a Latino with a disability involved in tech. I've never really actually shared my full story before, not publicly anyway. And what I'm talking about is my intersectional and intergenerational experience with shame, really. And I was a little bit concerned that I might be the odd duck out here talking about shame today, but it seems to be the recurring theme from this morning. So I guess I'm right on point. So my siblings and I grew up always knowing that we were Mexican. We knew that our father was Latino. I mean, come on, look at this guy. He looks like he could be a part of Carlos Santana. I mean, our mother was white, but it's kind of hard to deny our roots. And for some reason, we never questioned the fact that we have an Italian last name of Fazio. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, kids are something to these things, right? So my father's side of the family has always lived in San Francisco, just 45 minutes up and over the bridge from where we were at. My auntie, his sister, always had a good relationship with us. But for some reason, my father always kept his distance from that side of the family. So much so that the existence of our Mexican family basically faded out into nothing more than a distant memory that in the end just became a dream that ultimately faded away. And then one summer day, when I was about 11, he piled all five of us children into the car. He leaned around from the driver's side and said to us, "We're going to visit your grandfather, your auntie, your cousins, and your uncle. By the way, your papa's not your real grandfather. You're going to meet him there. Your real last name's not Fazio, and you're going to meet your real family. Oh, by the way, my real last name is Paz." I don't know if I said that right, because we don't really speak Spanish. But I'm sure you can imagine how that news flipped our whole world completely upside down and broke all of us out into tears. And I have absolutely no idea what prompted such an abrupt disruption of our lives, but we were soon to find out that this identity crisis had burdened our family for many, many years, long before we were born. It turns out my father changed both his first and last names from Manuel Paz to Stephen with a PH, Fazio, before any of us children were born. My grandmother had married an Italian man. Well, she'd been married to an Italian man all of our lives that we grew up calling our papa, which would be our grandfather, so we thought. When my father was a teenager, our papa asked him if he wanted to adopt him and give him his last name of Fazio. My father lived a childhood of being ashamed to be Mexican, growing up in the project of San Francisco. Growing up in the project of San Francisco, where he was the minority of minorities. My grandmother would lie to people and tell them she was Spanish because it elevated their social class during that time of the 60s. Tack that onto the criminal trouble that my biological grandfather found himself in, and my father was eager to rid himself of his Mexican heritage. Now, I don't share this crisis with identity that my father has. Although I've been aware of our namesake for over 20 years now, I'm at a point in my life where I'm proud to be who I am and everything that I am. It's unfortunate that it includes the name that I've made for myself professionally as David Fazio. So I've never changed my name, and I don't think it would be a good idea if I did. I'm proud to be Latino, and I'm proud to share the heritage of my pa's family blood. And I bring this up today because it's my belief that shame is the intersectional epicenter of the identity crisis that we face today as Latinos with disabilities, a minority of minorities, both of which carry an unsightly burden that we've talked about all too much today already. Fitting in and belonging means everything to our society, and to be excluded because of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religious preference, or functional ability feels excruciating. It's one of humankind's worst fears.
Anyway, my father felt that fear of exclusion, causing him to... Oh, there you go. No. Yeah. Here's like my scroll. Yeah. I guess my fingers aren't... Right, there we go. Okay. Anyway, my father felt that fear of exclusion, causing him to feel shame about his Latino blood. I felt a similar fear and shame of exclusion after August 2nd, 1996, when a traumatic brain injury forced me into the world of disability. I remember feeling shame and fear about the way that I limped when I walked, all through high school and well on after that. Shame that girls wouldn't find me attractive because of it and think that I was disgusting. Shame and fear that I wouldn't have anything in common with my friends anymore because I couldn't skateboard. Luckily, none of that ever happened to me. Girls still liked me, so yay. And my friends never excluded me from anything. They never treated me any different. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my disability story, and I'm not going to tell you about it because I want you to find motivation from it. I'm not going to tell it to you because I want it to be a source of your inspiration. And I'm most definitely not going to tell you about it because I want your sympathy or your compassion. You can do that for me because apparently my fingers don't work. No, just scroll it.
Maybe try clicking that arrow? Are you trying to move slides?
No, it's my notes page there. Oh, go ahead. I don't know, technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. Anyway, I'm going to tell you my story because I want you to look at me and see yourselves. I want you to look at me and see everybody else. And I want you to look at everyone else and see me because I'm not amazing. And the greatest struggle that we individuals with disabilities face in the 21st century today is overcoming the rampant disbelief that anything we do or accomplish is not out of the ordinary. Everyday accomplishments for us are not amazing. A quick internet search of the two words amazing and disability reveals 76,100,000 stories in just 0.559 seconds. And as of yesterday, well, that's as of yesterday, which is about 200,000 more results than when I searched it the day before. So, now, when I tell you my story about what happened to me, your very first reaction, which most commonly is from people, is, holy shit, you survived that. That's amazing. And I'll give it that much, yes, that was by the grace of God. Everything that happens after that, on the other hand, not to discount my own religious beliefs, is actually, absolutely the story of everybody's life here today. If 76,100,000 amazing stories of disability exist on the internet today, and that number gets exponentially larger every day, then it's time we really start asking ourselves, what exactly is so amazing after all? I mean, if everything's amazing, then nothing's amazing. Perhaps we should start expecting amazing every day, or perhaps we're keeping our expectations ridiculously low to begin with. Now you're going to get a kick out of this. So here we have three amazing wheelchair users. From your left to right, yeah.
We have genius theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, entrepreneur, pornographer, and pervert Larry Flint, and badass extreme sports athlete and heartthrob Aaron Wheels Fotheringham. Each one of these individuals beat the so-called odds. Yeah, so to speak. Stephen Hawking miraculously survived Lou Gehrig's disease, or commonly known as ALS, or maybe the vice versa. Aaron Fotheringham thrives with spina bifida, and Larry Flint survived an assassination. Each one of these individuals makes more money than everyone in this room combined. Each one of these individuals owns their own enterprise. Having a disability turns out to be a double-edged sword. Whichever way you look at it, it's harmful. If we ask to be perceived as we are, fully capable individuals, then we're scrutinized all too often when the sudden need for reasonable accommodation arises, as I think we talked about earlier this morning with Angelica and her story. I think we all have basically that similar experience. However, if we're perceived as disabled, then misconception all too often clouds perceptions of what we're truly capable of. And in the workplace, what happens is we're not given enough work, and that's what employers commonly complain about. Well, I didn't have enough work for this person because I wasn't ready for them to be so capable. But seriously. Anyway. But I'm all too familiar with this experience myself, as I'm sure all of you are as well. So this, I guess I should describe this picture. This is what a brain aneurysm looks like when it's being operated on by a neurologist. So, or I guess a neurosurgeon. I survived a hemorrhagic stroke as a result. Of a ruptured brain aneurysm. There's something under my microphone. Check. Okay, maybe if I talk over here, it'll be better. So anyway, I survived a hemorrhagic stroke as a result of a ruptured brain aneurysm from tangled arteries, which basically means they swelled, then exploded into a brain bleed the size of a softball. I was 13. So it was definitely amazing that I survived that, and lived to tell the tale. I woke up from a coma completely paralyzed on the entire left half of my body, and completely blind in the left half of each eye with the comprehension level of a toddler. I had to learn to walk, talk, and live life all over again. Four years later, and I was off to college, with the only visible remnants being from my brain injury being an exaggerated pimp limp, which I'm sure you've seen already, since I've walked around here, and a huge upside-down horseshoe-looking scar on the right side of my head. So, like so many other people with invisible, non-apparent, hidden, whatever you want to call it, disabilities, I've recovered so well that most people never perceived me outright as being disabled. They just thought I was stupid or something, or that I was in a car accident and something happened to my leg, which really wasn't considered a big deal. I was actually fired from a bank, and this is a little caveat. I was actually fired from a bank one time for not counting money fast enough and pissing off the pizza delivery boy who was delivering his rounds for that day. And what they didn't realize is that I also had no sensation on the left side of my hand, so I wasn't sure how many bills I was thumbing through, so it took me extra longer. But anyway. So, sorry, a little venting there. Anyway. I repeatedly found myself caught in this identity crisis of, am I disabled or not? While I lived life as capable as possible, there were many instances where I just needed help. The kind of help we would call reasonable accommodation. Unfortunately, my apparent abilities often aroused suspicion amongst my college professors anytime I asked for accommodations, even though they were already approved by the Disability Services Department in the university. I was constantly accused of trying to game the system. Yeah, there's nothing really wrong with you. You can talk. No one believed that such an intelligent, articulate, good-looking guy would have such severe cognitive... Thanks for laughing at that. Yes, I was intending to be a joke, but now that I think about it, I'm not so sure I wanted it to be laughed at. Anyway, so this kind of scrutiny, followed me well into my professional career, and thankfully my good looks did too, so we're good there. But, okay, enough for comedy. So my father would even accuse me of this practice for the longest time. So, because I limp, I trip and fall pretty often. Because of my vision, I walk into poles, sometimes walls, and each and every time I would do this around my father, he would take the opportunity to tell me that wouldn't happen if you were stretching like you're supposed to, or scanning the environment with your head like you know you need to. Oh, it gets better. Hold on. It's not working. So anytime this would happen, though, of course, I would just laugh it off and be like, Dad, I'm a cripple. What do you expect? He would turn to me and say, oh, so now you're disabled. You're only disabled when you want to be, which, by the way, is going to be the title of my book about my life story. So nobody take it, copyright right there. But anyway, but it's not an inspirational book. It's the book of misconceptions. So yeah. But point being is that, oh no, I'm sorry. He would continue on and say, when you were younger, and I told you you couldn't go outside and skateboard without a helmet, or you couldn't go out late because of your disability, you weren't disabled then, remember? But now you're disabled because it's convenient for you? And that's exactly the double-edged sword of disability and disbelief. Either we're always disabled, and anything and everything we do is amazing, or we're only disabled when we want to be, and it suits our best interests. This is the mindset that we so desperately need to escape. Sorry, I'm a storyteller, so this is kind of... Okay, so here we go. Hold your breath. A lot of people probably disagree with me about this, but empathy mongering is actually the culprit of this inappropriate praise and widespread misconception. And it does the absolute most damage to our standing in society. I've disrupted many diversity and inclusion conversations lately, and quite frankly pissed off more than a few people with my assertion that empathy is bad. And yes, you heard that right. Empathy is not good. I've written quite extensively on this, and if you believe in unconscious bias, and I think it's safe to say that just about all of us do, then you can't ever in your life accurately imagine what it's like to be anyone else without it being polluted with your unconscious bias and the misconceptions and prejudice of your own past experiences. Not only that, but you have to imagine what someone else tells you in order to believe it or to respond to it appropriately. What you're telling that person is that you don't trust them enough to take their word for it, or yourself to believe them. Unconditional acceptance and mindfulness are the alternative practices that will truly lead us to a more inclusive world where all individuals feel invited, welcomed, and valued to be whoever they are and whatever they want to be. The practice of empathy as we know it was developed by social psychologists 70 years ago. Today, human resources executives, social thought leaders, even technology giants, all hail empathy as if it were a religion that, when devoted to, would deliver the promised land of an equal and inclusive society with products, environments, and services designed for all to use with equal ease. So, that was 70 years ago. Unfortunately, that promise has never come to fruition in any aspect of society. And the equity gap has become a seemingly untraversable canyon for women, racial and ethnic minorities, and persons with disabilities, not just all over the country, but all over the world. Even after all of the empathy-centered tech labs and human resources training, only 20% of individuals with disabilities in the United States are employed. Of that 20%, the majority of those employed are working in sheltered workshops earning less than $2 an hour. That's in the 17, what would you call that? 21st century. And that number gets worse all over the world. Not to mention that less than 7% of corporations around the world have actually engaged the more than $8 trillion consumers with disabilities market. So what does all of this mean? If you ask me, it means it's either time for a shakedown or a shake-up. A shakedown would look a lot like a flurry of class action and litigation, and while it may be successful in forcing companies to pay damages, history reveals that it doesn't really affect systemic change all that much, which I think we covered a little bit earlier. A shake-up, on the other hand, looks like it would be a lot more fun and rewarding. A shake-up requires massive disruption. Compact disrupted IBM's dominance of the personal computer back in the 80s. And they call it the David versus Goliath, and Goliath got slain. Compaq kicked their ass in the 80s, and they were mad. So, Apple disrupted Microsoft's stronghold as the #1 tech giant in the 90s. Netflix disrupted Blockbuster's video rental concept just a decade ago. And Amazon continues to disrupt just what exactly we believe a tech company to be. Now, maybe it's the punk rock still left in me from my adolescence, but I'm all for the shakeup. Which is why I built an entire business model that disrupts both traditional workplace inclusion methods in addition to design thinking. On the organizational development side, my company teaches other companies how to shift from deficit-based thinking, problem-solving mentalities that are hell-bent on rooting out weaknesses, to strengths-based mindsets that appreciate and value the unique contributions of all individuals and employees towards achieving the common goals, which, at work, is ID work. On the design side, we focus on defining a meaningful experience that we call a provocative purpose, then designing a method to deliver that experience to each of the human senses, a process that we coined as common sense design. A product, environment, or service that meets these standards is said to achieve harmony at work, which is another Helix Opportunity trademark. But sales pitch aside, that's how you include employees of all differences in a thriving workforce, and that's how you engage the more than $8 trillion consumers with disabilities marketplace. The work that I do today has little to do, if anything, with my bachelor's degree in film and media studies. But my early experiences with unlawful denials of my request for reasonable accommodation fast-tracked me into the role of ADA advocator and litigator on my own behalf so that I could make my way through college, which again is another theme that I've heard not only this morning, but almost every single person with a disability I meet seems to have this common trait. And somebody asked something about that earlier today. I just wanted to reiterate that. I wanted something to change. I wanted to affect that change. So I began creating ADA compliance training programs like so many other diversity and inclusion firms do today. Then I started thinking to myself, I could actually start my own company and provide training to all other kinds of companies and really make a difference. I thought, surely my background was unique enough. So I did. I was living in Oklahoma City at the time, so I moved back to the Bay Area at the beginning of 2009 to start what was then just an employee relations consulting firm, Helix Opportunity. I was solely focused on providing disability awareness and legal compliance training. That was until January of 2010, and I'll never forget it. In the process of building up my company, I conducted a market interview with Cisco Systems' disability program manager at the time. I sat down with her and explained my background, my training, and the services that I proposed to offer. She listened intently, and at the end of the interview, I asked her if there was anything unique that set me apart from my competition and the other vendors they currently worked with at Cisco. And she told me no. She said, no, but I'd be willing to have other contractors provide services through you. And then she gave me some insights on the areas that they were interested in pursuing, and told me that she sees me as a future innovator in those spaces. I remember being heartbroken, crawling into my meeting with my small business consultant a few days later to debrief him on the meeting, and he looked at me and said, David, you don't have anything to be down about. First off, she said she'd work with you. Second, she said she sees you as an innovator. And third, she told you exactly how they're looking to innovate. And you know what? He was right. And that was the most pivotal experience of my professional life. I immediately set out to redefine Helix Opportunity to create a new identity. I realized that every single disability-related consulting and technology company was doing the exact same thing. Accessibility for one, awareness and legal compliance training for another. I also learned that neither approach was actually working. But one, accessibility was not and is still not actively engaging the consumers with disabilities demographic, nor is it providing a more inclusive world to us, which is a topic for another presentation that I've posted on YouTube that you guys can check out. But legal compliance, awareness, and empathy training have not led to more hiring of employees with disabilities. Henry Ford once famously, if I'd asked what people wanted, it'd have said faster horses. And here's a picture of a horse with a jetpack strapped to his back. Kind of neat. Look around, and there's an infinitesimal number of ideas being funded every day that are aimed at essentially building faster horses. Look at all of these lackluster so-called accessibility innovations and all of these mediocre inclusion programs. They're nothing more than aims at building faster horses. So I decided to be different. I decided to create something different. I rebranded my identity with Harmony at Work to focus on the missing link between accessibility, universal design, and inclusion. And that's the meaningful experience that every other approach ignores. I developed our common sense design and cooperative understanding programs to achieve harmony at work. I created methodologies that facilitate inclusion without unintentionally stigmatizing individuals by their differences, and that activate neurotransmitters in the brain at a potency 30 times stronger than any drug can reproduce, that reduce stress, sexual harassment, infidelity, increase cognition, motivation, focus, facilitate diverse human bonding, even treat depression, addiction, PTSD, and OCD. Okay, these techniques can be applied to both design and workforce management, and I've amassed quite a healthy tech following in promoting them lately. And how much time do I have? Oh, so, however, about a year ago, one of my biggest supporters, the Chief Accessibility Officer of a major Fortune-ranked company, came up to me at a conference mixer and said, "David, I really think you're a visionary, like me, but I could never recommend you to my company because you're a nonconformist." Now, this individual introduced me to many, many different people over the years, always praising me as a visionary like she is, and loving what I do. So, again, I was a little heartbroken, kind of like with my Cisco Systems experience. But when I got home, I started to practice a little mindfulness and really started thinking about what she said. The most commonly used adjective to describe me by my colleagues is passionate. So I came to the realization that my passionate behavior is easily misconstrued as argumentative or combative. So I gave it a little more thought and realized that I could do a much better job on defining just exactly what my identity and my brand is. And I think I've done a pretty good job since then. It's not that I'm a nonconformist, it's that I'm disruptive. My disruptive approach focuses on achievements greater than providing separate but equal use. While accessibility is important, I leave that up to all of the other companies aimed at creating faster horses. My focal point is creating entirely new vehicles that reach unfathomable horizons and the meaningful experiences that the marketplace of consumers with disabilities are still waiting to be included in. So I have this saying: you either disrupt or you play catch up. Disruption is the way of the world. Companies today are either disrupting or being disrupted. Some are even doing a little bit of both. These are the very same companies that have recognized consumers with disabilities as the largest untapped consumer demographic in the world. They have their sights set on us as the prize. They're also continuing to move into Latin American territories, AT&T being one. They just launched in Mexico, for instance, and we attended an accessibility conference down there together where they're looking to continue their inclusion efforts in that market. These companies willingly embrace the Latino customer base in the US also. So here we stand, Latinos with disabilities, at the intersection of disbelief and a huge market opportunity for disruption. Consumers with disabilities are the largest untapped frontier of commerce, and as Latinos, we possess an invaluable competitive edge in this intersectional marketplace. It's time we started putting forth the majority of our energy towards shaking things up. How can we leverage our Latinxness with a disability experience to drive positive marketplace change and disruption? Think about it. That's where we're going to succeed. And to any company out there listening, that's where they're going to be, where you're going to be able to utilize our experience and reach what's been beyond your grasp and take the lead. That's how you're going to benefit from the experiences of us Latinos in tech with a disability. And that's all I really